Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Hey everybody, I hope you had a great week. I gave my good friend T.D. Benton of White Collar Sideshow a call this week. It's so good, we're just going to hop right into it.
T.D., how are you doing?
I am doing great, Cindy. It's good to hear from you.
Where are you now?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. We've been here since March. We were based out of Nashville for a tour season, which we had so much lined up this year. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. We had some festivals, all these super cool things, and then COVID hit, and we were basing out of Nashville because it was easier to get 3 to 4 hours to each festival rather than 8 to 10 hours from Fort Smith, our home in Arkansas, our P.O. box, I should say. So we decided to stay in Nashville. Felt like there was some good energy and some movement happening through COVID. Yeah, figuring out creativity while all the tours were canceled.
Oh, wow. There is a lot happening for you guys. Well, for people that don't know, you are part of a husband and wife duo, and you are dispensing out some Arkansas shock and roll. Tell us what that is.
Well, for the longest time, especially in our musical industry experiences, we haven't really, and you know this, Cindy, because of not just Christian music, but music in general, because I know you're deep in that world. But there are so many boxes of what I like to call shortcuts to thinking, that what genre is this? Are you industrial? Are you rock and roll? Are you metal? Are you hardcore? Are you hip hop? Are you country? You know, there's all these different boxes that simplify exactly who you are. You know, especially, Cindy, in the Christian music world, we've always been kind of on the fringes. We've never really been in that box. When we first started with our first EP, we started in the Christian music world, and for 3.5 years, you can name a festival, we probably played at it. That was back in like 08, 09. And then our second album we recorded with Rob Zombie's producer out in Los Angeles. And it opened up a lot of doors for us to perform where a lot of, I don't want to say where a lot of Christians don't go, where a lot of believers may not want to go. And so we were playing horror film festivals like Spooky Empire. We were playing like the House of Shock in New Orleans. We were doing a lot of things that were very much outside of that Christian realm. And a lot of it was because we have a niche performance. You know, we do film with everything. I'm a big horror film fan, sci-fi fan. So we film our own original films and edit them to our music, so you get kind of this live soundtrack to a film, basically. In the industry world, especially in the Christian music world, we were doing something that no one was doing. And at the same time, it was very much a provocative show. So a lot of our first show, it was based on pornography addiction, based on my testimony. And I set it up to where we filmed our own actors struggling with pornography addiction, different kinds of sex addiction, hidden secret. And then the show would stop and I would give my whole testimony with lingo from the 1920s and 30s as a sideshow character, basically saying that my sideshow is pornography. Is there anyone else out there that's struggling with something that's hidden or something that consumes your life that you haven't been able to say? At the Christian festivals, man, you would have hundreds of people that would come up and get prayer. So it was very raw and very real. You say something and people are like, hey, we're not talking about that. So I didn't know. I thought that when you became a believer, you throw up everything you're struggling with. And that's where our performances came from, was that kind of a world. We were a band that made people feel really uncomfortable. You grew up one way and then you found the Lord in a different way. You understood what we were doing. And so when we would play clubs and bars, you would have people come up and say, man, how'd you get in my head? How'd you do this? I love what you're doing. And then sometimes in the Christian world, you would have people come up and say, I love what you're doing for the kids, but that's not me. I don't think so. I think you're a human being. And we're all consumed by something, especially in today's day and age.
I don't know what it is about Christians sometimes that they just don't want people to know they do struggle.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And a lot of times, like even for myself, I became a believer. I got cleaned up and, you know, you go for a long time and everything's great. And then you have your moments where you slip and fall. And man, how hard is it to be honest and have to go and tell somebody like, man, I screwed up again, because, you know, you want people to feel like the Lord's still in your life and he hasn't left you. But when you screw up again, it's easy to feel like, oh man, I'm the only one and I'm afraid to tell someone because of what they might think. And I've been through that on this journey many times. In fact, I write our albums about struggle. I write about falling apart and having to find freedom again and find forgiveness and the challenge of growth. Like, oh man, I got to start from square one all over again. But at the same time, that helps us when we're falling apart get back to focus and clarity on the Lord. It helps us get back to focus and clarity on roots, on mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, trimming back all the weeds and getting back into watering those roots that really have helped you grow. As challenging as it is, I feel like that's where great things come from, you know?
Amen. When I came to see you in Athens, wasn't sure what to expect. I actually did drop my jaw. I was like, whoa, wait, this is different. Do I like this? And yes, I did like this. I really wasn't expecting what I heard. And your whole show is so unique.
Yeah, I think that's why we started calling it shock and roll, because people were putting us in the industrial rock world, in the heavy rock world or the metal rock world. And especially our new album, the show that you've seen, is very much a mashup of old punk, old westerns. It's a mashup of industrial. It's a mashup of rock. It's a mashup of a lot of influences in my life. And so we didn't really know what to call it. Art should be for everyone. Should it be definable by a box or a genre? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we kind of, like what you said, unique enough or unconventional enough to step out of that realm. We are believers. I mean, if it wasn't for the Lord, we would not be doing what we do. But at the same time, we have had to step back and say, if we're a Christian band, if we're not a Christian band. You know, a lot of people argue that point, and we let other people define that for us. I'll have people that say, hey, this is my buddy T, and he plays in a Christian rock band called White Collar Sideshow. Or another buddy say, hey man, this is T and Veronica, and they play in this killer shock and roll band. We let people define what the art is to them as opposed to us, because the minute that you put the word Christian onto it, there are people who have stigmas, the same as myself when I was a kid, that will not ever go and touch those things. So we want our art to be for everyone. You know, if you're passionate about something, that's what comes out of your mouth. That's what you're singing about. That's where you're sharpening iron with people, even if it's in a bar in a club, or even if it's in a church. And so we are very much on the cusp of just trying to be artists, trying to be all things to all people, in the sense you might get something from this that might inspire you, it might challenge your perspective, or at the same time, it may even help you find a stepping stone to doing something even greater than you ever thought.
That's amazing. One of the things I love about your show is it's not just a concert, it's a theatrical show. There is a lot of movement. There's a lot of costume changes. There is video going in the background. There's so much to look at. There's so much to take in, and it's an experience. It's not just going to a concert.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, again, I grew up in the 80s where you had big arena concerts. You know, they were the first ones that I ever kind of saw doing film and imagery that's been edited to performances. And I kind of came from that influence of like a Nine Inch Nails, where you have so much of your imagery almost portraying and showing the audience not just what you're singing about, but here's a different element that you might not have ever noticed or thought of. When you come to see the live performance, it's an actual film, it's a movie. So the first 3 songs are chapter 1, second 3 songs are chapter 2, third 3 songs are chapter 3, and the last 2 songs are your grand finale. And the film goes along with everything that's in that. There's a narration, there's meat and potatoes beyond just what I'm singing about or just what the music is. It's performance art more than just a band. I think the hard part, especially through COVID, is we just released the album. We've only done 1 tour, and then everything this year was canceled. So we spent 3 years filming this movie, putting this album together, putting the live show together for everything to just kind of end. In the entertainment industry, we were the first to leave the workforce, and looks like we'll be the last to come back into it.
Yeah, it's sad for all of us.
Because I know you're all in, girl.
I am all in.
Backstage with Mothership returns after this. This hour is being made possible by our business ministry partner, Anchor Bolt Express, the place for construction fasteners and a supporter of Christian music and this station. On the web at anchorboltexpress.com.
Okay, T. I remember when we met, we were in the back room and we were hovering over the pudding.
Yeah, oh man, you're the queen. You know, mothership and all of that. I love everything that's about. I love all of your hospitality, and it was just wonderful to meet you. I feel like we'd known each other for years. even though we had.
Well, I was going to say the same thing, and I apologize again that I didn't know you hadn't had a meal or I'd have brought a full meal. When we were talking and the word musicianaries came out of your mouth before I said it, I probably had a goofy grin on my face because not many people use that word, and I've been using it for quite a while. And that is what you guys are. You are musicianaries, and it's such a unique calling and maybe a thankless calling in many ways. But I've seen so much fruit through the metal and rock and your ministry. I mean, it's exciting to watch, and that's why I want to invest in people like you guys.
Oh, man. Well, that's very, very kind of you to say, too. I didn't even know there was a Christian music world until about the year 2001. So, I mean, I didn't even know that realm existed. And I feel like this is kind of how we started, too. When we were selling everything off, it didn't initially happen like that. I had been having these dreams for like 3 years, and my wife managed a huge music company. My wife called me and said there was a missionary that came and spoke at our church today. He posed the question, if your life was a bumper sticker and you could only put one phrase in that bumper sticker to sum up your entire being, what would that phrase be? And my wife at the time was like, wow, American dreamer. Like our future goals were trips to Vegas, a couple Harleys, a cruise. Like, we were Christians, so worship leaders in the church, but literally we would come home and look at each other and say, man, this is what we were taught to have when we were older, but I just feel like a zombie. I don't feel like we're offering anything to the world. Also, at the same time, that missionary posed another question that said, look, there's a lot of creative people in the Christian world, in the church world, but a lot of the creative ideas either don't have the right business management or they don't line up with church vision. And so they fall under the way. And so these creative people that have these great ideas, it kind of just fizzles because it didn't line up with where the whole vision as a church family was going. And so my wife called me. I was in Minnesota helping Risen Drums. And she's like, look, this missionary spoke to me today. We're going to sell everything we own. We're going to take these dreams on the road. And I was like, woman, are you crazy? Like, how will we live? And then she told me, and we're not going to charge for performances. And I was like, what? and we still to this day have not charged a guarantee or a contract for any of our performances. Some people do sell ticket prices and things like that. But for us, we just ask for a donation, or in the Christian world would be an offering. Mm-hmm. And we became a nonprofit a couple of years ago, and we live on the love of people who donate to us. To go along with that too, Cindy, you're right. Like for us, I used to have a chip on my shoulder, especially when it came to churches who didn't get what we were doing. And it was challenging. Can't tell you how many times I've been called the devil. More times than as a believer than before I was a believer. And so I would have a chip on my shoulder because I'd be like, man, I thought we were all supposed to get along and we were supposed to do these things. But I didn't realize I was naive coming into it. In our second album, it's a horror movie that plays behind it. It's based on the 7 deadly sins. Each character is struggling with something that's consuming them. There's a creepy pig that's torturing people. Like, no one was booking us for Christmas. I'll put it that way. It was always Halloween. But by the end of the show, in the film, the last song, the pig would take the mask off, and it would be the characters torturing themselves the whole time, which is exactly what we do as human beings. But trying to get people to stay through the end of the film, And then I would have a lot of Christians that would say, well, why don't you tell them what's going to happen at the beginning? Why don't you go ahead and explain what they're going to see before so no one leaves? And I'm like, man, when you go to a movie, do you want the ending first? I mean, there's a little bit of a challenge in the Christian world. If the Lord calls us to do something that's completely different than anything we've ever known, what happens if he calls us to go out of a box and everybody thinks that you're crazy? Everybody's telling you, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. Why are you doing this? Don't take that literally. Or even people saying, you're going to fail. If you do that, you're going to fail. Why are you leaving your job security? Why are you leaving your insurance, your Social Security? Why are you leaving all these things? And then we'd be like, well, the Lord's called us to do it. Well, you're not taking that literally, are you? So it became a challenge of trying to find people in your life who are encouragers and cheerleaders. And that's what you're looking for when you're sharing in a church, is going, look, if the Lord's calling you to do something, sometimes people might think insane. Are you going to do it? Are you going to hold back? And I always think about this when Peter, you have all the disciples in the boat, right? Mm-hmm. And when Peter sees Jesus walking on the water, and it's in the storm, man, he's like, dude, there's the Lord. Like, I'm jumping out of the boat to go get him, right? He's not thinking twice about it. He's like, there he is. If he's doing it, I'm doing it. And can you only imagine all the other disciples are in the boat going, Peter, what are you doing, man? Your food is in here. Your friends are in here. Your security is here. Your camaraderie is here. Get back in the boat. Are you crazy? And all I could think about is Peter going, but that's where he's calling me to. That's where he wants me to be. And that may not line up with everybody's vision in that boat, you know?
But it's what you're supposed to do.
Right. And I always pictured this in my mind too, where Peter gets to Jesus and he's about to grab him. And Jesus is like, oh, you made it this far, Peter. And Jesus kind of takes a step back and he's like, come on, let's keep going. I feel like that's the journey that we've been on in this process. When we leave earth and you're face to face with the Lord, I want the Lord to say, well done, good and faithful servant.
Backstage with Mothership returns after this. Check us out on Facebook at I'm with Mothership.
Up next, the last segment with T.D. Benton of White Collar Sideshow.
Can you tell me a little bit about I Didn't Come Here to Die and Fistful of Grace?
Well, first of all, I think I Didn't Come Here to Die should be the 2020 anthem.
For real.
It's so funny because, you know, I wrote most of these songs. We were touring in Brazil, and I think it was 2015 or 16. My brother called me the other day, and my brother's like, dude, you didn't realize all of the words to all these songs are so prophetic for right now and what's happening today. And I was reading the words, and I was like, wow, you're exactly right. This is crazy. I had already written this album. I'd already written the film, but we had been on the road so long that we were completely falling apart. And when I got back to Arkansas, I let my skirt down. I was falling back into old addictions, and I struggled, man. I just struggled. Veronica and I both did, for us to get our focus and clarity back. I had to start going to therapy. I started going to groups. Mental health has been a game changer for me. I'm an ADHD. I've always struggled with suicide and depression, especially as an artist. You know, you're throwing your heart out there, your mind, your soul for everyone to tear up and rip up, and you don't know who really to trust. Veronica helped me get my focus and clarity back. Started getting my life back to the square roots of why we even got started. So I wrote that song, I Didn't Come Here to Die, because we didn't come here to die. We came here to live. And a lot of the lyrics, when my head's wrapped blue and gray, like it's the Civil War of going through your head. Am I on the right track? Am I falling apart? What's the thorn in my side? What are the things that's consuming me? So there's so much to the battle that goes on between your heart, mind, and soul. And I feel like I'm singing that to myself in the mirror. And so that's what that song is really an anthem for, not just for other people, but really for myself. And Fistful of Grace, my son helped me write the lyrics to that song. That, I feel like it's one of the best songs I've ever written. In fact, it's the new single that's coming out in 3 weeks. That song takes a summary of not just the whole album or our whole life in that moment, but a lot of things that I've been struggling with for 14 years on this journey, and basically gives it to the Lord. You're fistful of grace. I've been baptized in fire. Fistful of grace, watch me trip this live wire. I don't need no vice. I only need a taste of freedom. And with that, the Lord gives you the fistful of grace. But I think Fistful of Grace sums up everything in that album. There is freedom to move forward, to grow from your mistakes, to grow from shame, from guilt, and anything else that's haunting you or consuming you.
Maybe that is why some people don't get it that's in the church. They want something laid out, just easily said, rather than maybe done in an artistic or esoteric way.
Yeah.
It's hard for some people.
That's part of having the films, too. Here's the song. You might get the song one way, but you might see it in a different way.
Right.
And, man, you're right on, Cindy. Like, that is exactly I don't want to say that's a problem. It's easy to spoon feed, and that makes it safe, right? Like, if you're
Yes.
Don't do drugs, do Jesus. Oh, by the way, this song is about that. I mean, there's an easy way for people to go, okay, I get it. I was really challenged. We played this festival in Poland, and it was put on by Christians, but it wasn't a Christian festival. They may have a couple Christian acts the whole weekend, and the whole festival was in a 16th century castle.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so every stage is inside the castle. Castle's so big. And we were the headliner, if you could even believe that, for one night, like Saturday night.
That's amazing.
I was like, yeah, no one knows who we are. But because of the film and the setup, and this was back when we had our second album, I would stop right before the last song, and I would share. I would say things like, you know, when everything is destroyed on this planet and we're all living under the ground, maybe that's when we'll realize God is all we need. And so I would say things like that because that's how I always felt.
Mm-hmm.
And so after the festival director, he's from Poland, right? He messaged and drove to meet with us. And I'll never forget, like, he is the kindest guy. And so we're talking, he's asking about the show, and he looks at me and he said, why did you share all that stuff that night? You didn't have to do that. Everything that you do is in the film. let the film do the talking. Why did you stop? Why did you give it away? Why did you spoon feed the audience an answer? Because now the audience is going, oh man, that was really good, until he said something about God or Christianity, and now I don't even want it. Because you put a box out there where people are afraid to touch it, but then you might have had all the Christians go, that's right, he needed to say that. He needed to push this. I really took that to heart, and I was like, man, I get it. He really challenged my thinking. So when I put this last album together, I was like, you know what? I'm going to let the film do the talking. So I wrote those narratives, and you've seen the show. So it starts with a narrator, which is Veronica, talking about her character in the film at the beginning. It also has her come back in as a narrator in the second chapter, the third chapter, and the last chapter. And it's all about her character going from a villain to having a change of heart, to having the shame and the guilt of being defined by her past, to finding freedom at the end. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, in a nutshell, is a lot of our lives. And and so when I was writing that, obviously Veronica's character is saying it, but it's all based a lot on my life and a lot of things that we went through. And then I don't say anything. Now, if we're at a church, I might say something about what's it look like when God calls us to do something strange and unusual for him. Mm-hmm. But in the scheme of our life, I let the show be the show. And at the end, if someone comes up and is like, oh my gosh, that made me think. People are inspired in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. A lot of things have been happening. Grizzly Award, Drummer of the Year.
Yeah, Drummer of the Year, right? Like sometimes an old dog gets a bone. So grateful to win that award. And what's crazy is I don't even know where to put that award because
you can leave it at my house.
After that happened, there's a few things. You know, we were on Billboard. We were got to 28 on Billboard with one of our songs. So I'm a part of the Academy now. So I get to vote for Grammy nominees. Veronica started that application process last January, and only 2,300 people worldwide a year are invited.
Wow, so cool.
It's crazy.
It really is. Okay, last question. What kind of snacks do you and Veronica like to eat on the road?
Of course, we live in the RV, so she can just go back and get
whatever
make a
she
wrap
wants.
or something.
Yeah.
Right. But my guilty cheat would be Starburst Minis.
Okay.
Like we do bran flakes with some muesli and some blueberries and chia seeds and things like that in the morning, and then maybe a yogurt. And then we'll do something really light like a salad or a wrap or something for lunch. And we do have a little fridge, so do a lot of like lean meats, quinoa, rice, lots of vegetables. And
now I'm getting hungry again.
You know, oh man, me too. You definitely serve in a great way, and I'm super thankful that we got to know each other and meet each other.
Oh, that's sweet. Thanks, T, for taking some time out to talk with me tonight.
I love you, girl.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank y'all for stopping in tonight. Don't forget to check out my I'm with Mothership page on Facebook and my blog on solidrockradio.org for links to the White Collar Sideshow's social accounts. You can also find a YouTube link to the entire live show of I Didn't Come Here to Die that was filmed in Nashville. Next week, Miggy Sanchez of Relent will be here, and thanks for stopping in. And stay tuned for more great music all night long. This show will be replayed at 4 a.m. Eastern Time and will be added to the Solid Rock Radio website, archive, and SoundCloud soon. I pray you all have a wonderful week, and remember to be kind to one another.